What's your favorite idea? Mine is.
Hello, hello. It's been a minute. I've been pretty busy lately, and these 40 to 70 minute scripted theory videos are a bit tough to make. I've got a simpler one for you today, though, compared to my massive Oki videos. Today, I'm going to talk about Asuka's Keepout. I'm going to talk about the basics of how her Keepout is applied, and what you can get out of it, and I'm going to talk in detail about all of the different moves that Asuka has that contribute to her Keepout game, how to use them, and how they all differ from one another. Before I get into the meat of the video, though, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Something I do a lot when breaking down Asuka's gameplay for myself is to group moves and concepts into these sorts of modes of gameplay, in a sense, like rushdown or keepout, for example. All it is I'm looking at the properties of different moves and grouping them together in terms of what they can do for me, mostly depending on my distance from the other player. I think this is the best way to improve your understanding of the character and what your objectives should be in a variety of situations. There are several of these modes of gameplay that I would consider to be the main pillars of Asuka gameplay, which I explain in concise detail in a document I've made called Baby's First Asuka Guide. I would call Keepout one of these major pillars of Asuka play, and it's what I would personally recommend as a starting point for Asuka for reasons that I'll explain in just a second. A lot of my upcoming theory videos will be organized this way, where I present a pillar of Asuka's gameplay and describe its nuances and the moves that are involved. If any of this sounds interesting or helpful to you, I've linked my Baby's First Asuka guide in the description of this video. This video in particular is an exhaustive look at Asuka's Keepout theory, but the Baby's First Asuka guide will give you a concise starting point for applying her Keepout, as well as several other major pillars of her play that new Asuka players will want to understand to get the most out of it. With all of that out of the way, I'll start by breaking down the basics of Asuka's Keepout. Now, Keepout isn't really a playstyle in Tekken 8. Tekken 8 incentivizes aggression, and Asuka kind of has trouble creating space. Keepout still has important utility, though, when it comes to getting respect with Asuka, and its ease of use in this sense is why I recommend it as a starting point for new Asuka players. When applying Keepout, Asuka uses moves from a long distance, about range 3 and beyond, like this, that are difficult to whiff punish. This allows you to throw out hitboxes that make it difficult for the other player to approach you, and they can't really do a whole lot about it other than play neutral at your pace. You would place your Keepout moves by either predicting if and when the other player will try to approach you, or by using them sporadically to discourage the other player from approaching by making it hard to predict when you're going to put out a dangerous hitbox. Even if your Keepout doesn't land hits, if the other player hesitates to approach you, it's still done its job. This allows you to approach instead. It's generally in the other player's best interest not to rush down Asuka, so the threat of your Keepout moves can create a mental advantage situation. When you see that the other player is hesitating to approach you, that's your opportunity to approach and start a proper offense. Getting respect from the other player is how I tend to use Asuka's Keepout. I think it's the easiest and safest way for Asuka to initiate an offense. With all that being said, there are some risks and challenges involved with Asuka's Keepout that are really important to be aware of. Playing too passively and spamming attacks from far away can be a bit of a trap because of the nature of Tekken 8 rewarding aggressive play, and some crucial weaknesses that Asuka has when it comes to playing long-range defense and recovering from that long-range defensive position. You don't really want to force Keepout, because Asuka has a hard time creating space due to her really weak backdash. What will tend to happen is you'll find yourself at Keepout range when both players are backdashing or playing passive. Besides her weak backdash, The other reason you don't want to force or over-rely on Keepout is because you don't want to find yourself backed into a wall. When you're far away, apart from throwing out hitboxes to stuff out or deter an approach from the other player, your goals are generally to find an opportunity to get up close again, or to use movement to get a favorable position where you don't risk getting pushed into the wall. The last reason you want to be a bit wary of Keepout is that, although it's a really good way to get the other player to hesitate, Asuka still has to extend herself a lot in order to close the distance against a patient player. Asuka's approach tools all have drawbacks that make them tricky or risky to use from Keepout range. Your attacks that are useful for an approach tend to be linear or require you to run in really close to be effective. Because of this, a lot of the time, the best way to rush in with Asuka from Keepout range is to just run your ass over to the other player. In any case, if you're planning to rush in and start an offense, you need to be really sure that the other player isn't going to do any Keepout of their own. Either that, or you backdash block to close distance in smaller, safer increments, but this takes more time, which can be a tricky situation in itself in Tekken 8. A wise man once said, "Hesitation is defeat." The moves that I'm going to discuss in this video, roughly in order of importance and viability, are back 3, forward 4, down forward 1, while standing 4, down forward 2, up forward 3, sidestep 4, forward 3, while standing 1+2, and back 1. So I've explained all of the basics of what Keepout does for you, and what you need to keep in mind when you're applying it and using it to your advantage. What I'm going to do now is break down all of the moves that are useful for Asuka's Keepout, and why you would use them and what to keep in mind when you do. I have these moves separated into a few categories to help emphasize how they're used. I'm going to be starting with Asuka's key Keepout moves. In my Baby's First Asuka guide, the two key attacks I list are back 3 and forward 4. These are the backbone of Asuka's Keepout, so if you're going to take away anything from this video, it should be these two moves. For all of the moves that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to first describe what makes them difficult to punish for the other player, and then I'm going to break down the properties of the moves, why they're useful, and how you would apply them. Most of the moves I'm going to talk about have more going for them than what I'm going to talk about here, but for this video I'm just talking about the notable things these moves offer in the context of Asuka's Keepout. Back 3. Back 3 is difficult to whiff punish because of the backwards movement during its recovery. In terms of properties, back 3 has slight evasiveness, fast startup at 16 frames, and a reliable mid-hitbox. These things combined make it very effective at clipping the other player out of movement and attacks, which is why Asukas tend to use it at any range, even up close. A big aspect of back 3 is that the backwards movement in its recovery creates extra space, which makes it difficult for the other player to approach you, even on whiff. This means that after you whiff back 3, you can generally continue your Keepout without much risk that the other player will stuff you out of your next attack. In a lot of cases, you can just spam back 3 from far away with impunity. Back 3 is hands down your best tool when it comes to true Keepout, when you're trying to stop the other player from approaching you. If you use this move periodically from Keepout range, even without a full sense of the other player's timing, this will clip players out of a sloppy approach and make it difficult for them to find the right moment to come at you. A couple extra notes about back 3, and this first one will kind of apply to all of these moves. It does look silly when you whiff back 3 from range 3 or beyond, but don't let scrubs on Twitter fool you into thinking that this is a bad play. Remember that if the threat of back 3 is causing the other player to hesitate in their approach, it's doing its job, and you can capitalize on this hesitation by closing distance and starting your own offense. This goes for all of Asuka's Keepout moves. Finally, back 3 is a natural hit launcher, and in case you don't know, in order to convert from back 3, you hit confirm into the 4-3 leg cutter follow-ups. All you gotta do is do back 3, and when you see it connect, press 4-3, and then you can convert into a normal combo. Forward 4. Forward 4 is difficult to whiff punish due to its fast recovery. It recovers really quickly, and the other player is going to have a very hard time whiff punishing you if they're just reacting to whether or not the move whiffed. The increased reach compared to back 3 makes it easier for forward 4 to clip the other player out of attacks and movement. You also have the upper hand if the other player dash blocks, because forward 4 is +3 on block. Forward 4 can be crushed though, it can be high crushed, and it can be low profile because the hitbox is rather high above the ground. So implementation of forward 4 can be slightly matchup dependent. For example, evasive characters like Xiao Yu can really kneecap the effectiveness of this move. The forward movement of forward 4 means you will sacrifice space when you use it, and so you'll have to be prepared to play defense when it whiffs. So when it whiffs, you gotta be ready to block or backdash and block. This isn't a deal breaker though. Forward 4 is a fantastic complement to back 3. You can use it in the same way that you would use back 3, just by throwing it out periodically to make it difficult for the other player to approach. But forward 4's properties make it a bit better to use when you have a sense of the other player's timing. I would recommend taking advantage of the extra reach forward 4 has, and throwing the move out when you think the other player is going to start their approach. Some notes to wrap up the forward 4 breakdown, mostly to do with getting damage after it. You can get an easy mini combo after forward 4 by following up with forward 3+4 or down back 4-3 for about 40 damage. If you're serious about Asuka though, it's highly recommended that you practice the dash 1+4 pickup for a full launch, for more damage obviously and access to Asuka's Oki setups. The trick to dash 1+4 is to buffer the dash input during the recovery of forward 4 so that the dash comes out frame perfect, and then it's just a matter of getting used to the timing of pressing 1+4. It's a bit tricky, but it's easy to pull off with some practice. Before I move on to talk about the rest of Asuka's Keepout moves, I want to talk about whiff punishment and mental stack. Asuka has a lot of moves she uses for Keepout, and the common theme among all of them is that they're difficult to punish. Forward 4 recovers really quickly and is impossible to whiff punish if you're reacting to the move's recovery. A player that's on point, though, can react to the startup of your attack and whiff punish it that way. This is something you'll have to consider if you're going to whiff forward 4 against a good player. Eventually, they'll start looking out for it. This is always something you should be considering, but to make it less likely to happen, you should think about creating a mental stack around Asuka's Keepout. A mental stack is basically when a player has a lot of different things to think about, which makes it really difficult for them to react to or make guesses around one particular attack or strategy. In the case of Asuka's Keepout, you have a lot of different attacks you can use that aren't as powerful and ubiquitous as back 3 or forward 4, but they will flesh out your Keepout and make it a bit more difficult to respond to. The best start is to work some of your lightest mids into your Keepout. Down forward 1, while standing 4, and down forward 2 are your go-tos, and you can sort of use them interchangeably. Down forward 1. Down forward 1 is practically impossible to whiff punish on reaction. Just throwing this out occasionally in neutral will make a big difference in general, not even just for Keepout in particular. It has low reach, but it can still clip the other player out of an approach or attack. The delayable extensions that down forward 1 has give you some leverage to force the other player to respect you after you whiff down forward 1, which gives the move some potential mental advantage that can make it useful as an offense starter if you think the other player is going to be afraid to contest the extensions. Down forward 1 is +8 on hit, so you can try to frame trap them with something like back 4 or down 2, or take the opportunity to dash in and or apply a mix-up if you think that the other player will respect you. Down forward 1 can also be useful for baiting unsafe punishes if the other player is determined to whiff punish your keep-out moves by reacting to just any movement that they see. In this way, down forward 1 forces the other player to react to specific animations, or to give up on whiff punishing your keep-out altogether. Knowing when to use down forward 1 isn't anything complicated. The move is so fast and low commitment that you can kind of throw it out whenever you want. It isn't generally going to result in anything, but it's a really reliable hitbox to throw out to keep a little wall between you and the other player. If you want, you can step up your keep-out down forward 1 by working in the extensions, especially down forward 1-4, which is a counter hit launcher, to stuff out any players who think it's safe to approach you after you whiff down forward 1. While standing 4. While standing 4 seems to recover slightly slower than down forward 1, but it's still extremely difficult to whiff punish on reaction. In general, it's got the same application as down forward 1, but it has a better vertical mid hitbox and slightly more reach. This makes it more reliable as a mid poke against low profile attacks, especially slides like from Law or Shaheen. On hit, while standing 4 is the same as down forward 1. It's +8 on hit, so you can try to frame trap or dash in for a mix-up or whatever you want. Like I said earlier, I think it's pretty safe to use while standing 4 alongside down forward 1 during keep-out. It's a really chunky and reliable mid that can clip just about anything that's coming at you, and it's really quick and non-committal. The big thing with while standing 4, though, is that you ideally want to perform it as an instant while standing 4. Like I said earlier, I think it's pretty safe to use while standing 4 alongside down forward 1 during keep-out. It's a really chunky and reliable mid that can clip just about anything that's coming at you, and it's really quick and non-committal. The big thing with while standing 4, though, is that you ideally want to perform it as an instant while standing 4. I've got some notes here for the instant while standing 4, because this is pretty important. If you practice instant while standing 4 and perform it consistently in matches, this is a great tool. Instant while standing inputs can be tricky to do, but here's a brief breakdown of instant while standing that might help you during your practice. Instant while standing refers to performing a while standing attack out of a crouch before you actually enter a full crouch state. Full crouch takes 11 frames to activate from a raw crouch input, and from full crouch you have about a 5-frame window or something like that to press a button after releasing crouch to get a while standing attack. You can perform a while standing attack before your full crouch state activates as early as frame 6 of your crouch input, but the frame window for your button input is smaller depending on how early you released your crouch input. Ultimately, your goal when performing an instant while standing attack is to do a really brief crouch input and then release your crouch and press your button attack on the same frame. This is tricky and takes some practice, but if you can do it, you can perform while standing moves pretty quickly from a standing position, which is pretty helpful for Asuka in particular, and in our case, it gives us access to instant while standing 4, and another useful move that I'll touch on later. Down forward 2. Down forward 2 is difficult to whiff punish due to its fast recovery, infamously so. It's slower than down forward 1 or while standing 4, slightly slower, but it's still really quick. You know, this is a 15 frame launcher, and this is a full launcher, so this is actually really common to use during Asuka's Keepout. It's quick, recovers quick, and it's a launcher. The reach on down forward 2 is still pretty short. It's only a little bit longer than while standing 4, but that's not a deal breaker. Down forward 2 is still really great at clipping players who are trying to approach you or who are pressing buttons. This is also safe on block in case the other player tries to dash block, which is fantastic for a launcher. This is actually -6 on block, which is amazing. You can still parry afterwards and stuff. You'll get a lot of use out of down forward 2 for controlling the space. You'll just need to play defense after you whiff it from closer up if you whiff it at around range 3, because it is a little bit slow. Down forward 2 is great. I take this move for granted so much that I originally totally forgot to include it in this video. I recommend trying to time it around when you think the other player will approach you, but it's functionally just about as quick as down forward 1 or while standing 4, so you're usually pretty safe to chuck it out whenever you want. Down forward 2 alone is a huge part of what makes it hard to know when it's safe to approach Asuka. You never know when this thing is just gonna bop you. A few final notes about down forward 2. Down forward 2 is a normal hit launcher, so you can convert with whatever you want. It technically only launches on normal hit. If the other player is standing, it won't launch them if they're in a crouching state. But down forward 2, in the context of Asuka's Keepout, tends to operate like a counter hit launcher, which will always launch the other player, so that isn't really an issue. In this section, I've got a couple of Keepout counter hit tools for you. Up forward 3 and sidestep 4. They're not as explosive as back 3 and forward 4 with their natural hit launches, but they're still really good and have their own benefits and drawbacks that'll spice up your Keepout and add to that mental stack I was talking about. Up forward 3. Up forward 3 is really difficult to whiff punish due to its fast recovery. It's really similar in its Keepout application to forward 4. Up forward 3 basically trades the natural hit launch and plus frames for a mid hitbox and a handy low crush. Up forward 3 has great reach and is really safe on block. It's only -3. This makes it excellent for fishing for counter hits and also for starting an offense, since at frames that low, you can easily try to take your turn or sidestep or whatever. Up forward 3 is only a launcher on counter hit, but it's still really great on hit at +9, +8 or +9, so you can frame trap or apply a mix-up or whatever you want. This is one of Asuka's highest utility mids. And its only significant drawback is that it has a poor hitbox. The hitbox, despite being a mid, looks like a high and it acts like a high in a lot of cases. It's really easy to low profile up forward 3. So there's some risk to abusing this move in certain matchups against evasive characters, such as, once again, Xiaoyu. Up forward 3 has forward movement like up forward 4 does. So when you whiff up forward 3, you do want to be prepared to play defense. You would essentially use up forward 3 the same way that you would forward 4 in a Keepout sense. You can just throw it out periodically to make it difficult for the other player to approach you, but it's better to take advantage of its forward movement to try to stuff the other player when you think they're going to try to start their offense. Up forward 3 is a counter hit launcher, of course, and to confirm from a counter hit up forward 3, you just confirm into down back forward 3 for a normal combo. Sidestep 4. This is an interesting one. Sidestep 4 is difficult to whiff punish due to its fast recovery, but it does recover a bit slower than your other fast recovery Keepout options. For this one, you're definitely going to want to mix up what you're doing so that it's difficult for the other player to react to. Sidestep 4 is quite a bit weaker than her other keep-out moves. It has a slow startup, especially on account that it comes out of a sidestep. It has comparatively slow recovery, although it still recovers pretty quick. And it has a really high hitbox that's easy to low profile, in addition to it being a high. And it has low reward on natural hit. It's +8, but that can vary and the distance can be a bit awkward. It's not a bad move though. It's still a counter hit launcher, and it's still really tricky to whiff punish. You can mitigate the impact of the slow startup by implementing this move when you're sidestepping to get a good position. Sidestep 4 also has a really impressive 5 whole active frames, if you can read that on the bottom there. Frames 17 to 21, that's active. So if the other player just happens to press in that window, they're getting counter hit launch. Sidestep 4 also has pretty decent reach. It's about the same as up forward 3, and it also has this unique disjointedness of the hitbox. If you pay close attention, you can see that it extends pretty far away from Asuka's main body, so that hitbox can make it pretty good against approaching players in theory. Sidestep 4 does have some forward movement, so you do need to play defense if you're whiffing it from somewhat close up, like closer to range 3, like this. It doesn't move forward as much as forward 4 and up forward 3 do though. You do get to keep more of your space, and possibly continue your keep out if you use this move from really far away, like closer to range 4. I've been told that I'm sleeping on Sidestep 4. I tend not to use it much, but it is just as valid as any of her other keep out moves. You can throw it into your keep out kit to expand your mental stack, or like I mentioned earlier, you can work it into your sidestep positioning where the slow startup is less of an issue. Sidestep 4 could be useful if you want to do a move from far away that has good reach, where back 3 won't be as effective at stuffing the other player out of their approach, but doesn't give up as much space as up forward 3 or forward 4 do, which can allow you to keep applying keep out, like I mentioned earlier. Sidestep 4 is, again, a counter hit launcher, but this move has a bit of a weird ideal conversion. It's best to convert from Sidestep 4 with dash down forward 3, 1+4, down back 1-4 into a tornado and your ender, kinda like this. You can convert from a sidestep right 4 with down back 4-3, but this conversion can only be done from a sidestep right 4, and if you hit a counter hit sidestep right 4 from tip range, then the combo can drop if you do that. So it's best to do the dash down forward 3. For this last section, I'm somewhat stretching the definition of keep out that I've been working with for this video. But these moves fulfill a pretty similar purpose of making it hard for the other player to do shit when you're far away. I'm going to talk about forward 3, while standing 1+2, and back 1. Forward 3. This move is effective keep out due to its asinine reach. This is a free punish on whiff. You do not want to whiff this, in contrast to her other keep out moves. Forward 3 should always connect. This move is safe on block though, so you won't be punished. The massive reach and the huge homing mid hitbox of forward 3 means the move is always a threat at basically any range. Working this into your neutral will make the other player think twice about moving or pressing anything when you're far away. You are -9 on block when you connect with forward 3, so you generally have to play defense if this doesn't hit the other player, but you do recover in full crouch, so you can try to steal your turn from players who are unaware that you're high crushing, or are going for a big slow play that can get stuffed with something like full crouch down forward 2. Forward forward 3 also has pretty good reward on hit. It's plus 11, although they can guard, nothing is guaranteed. And at plus 11, while standing 1+2 is a frame trap counter hit launching mid that only trades with 10 frame moves, but you still get the launch even if it does trade. And the counter hit effect of forward forward 3 is also pretty good for what it is. It's hard to go wrong with forward forward 3. It's a nearly flawless hitbox with incredible reach, so it's an amazing move to throw out when you suspect that the other player is going to move or press a button, without any of the hitbox or move property drawbacks of forward 4 or up forward 3. The only reason you might not spam this move all the time is because it's so heavily minus on block, which can put you in a really sticky situation against players that are prepared to take advantage of those minus frames. A last note on forward forward 3, just for how to follow up from the counter hit. On a counter hit forward forward 3, you do dash forward 3+4. So you basically just do a while running 3+4 input. So like forward 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 3+4. And that'll get you 48 damage on counter hit total, which is pretty cool. While standing 1+2. This is sort of similar in its application to forward forward 3. While standing 1+2 is effective for its incredible reach, and it's safe on block, but you don't want to whiff this move because it's very long to recover on whiff. This has a weaker mid hitbox compared to forward forward 3. For one, while standing 1+2 isn't a homing move, but it's also somewhat linear if they sidewalk it the correct way. But it does have similar reach, and it has a much higher counter hit reward. This is a counter hit launcher. This will have the same effect as forward forward 3 of making the other player take a big risk whenever they're pressing a button within while standing 1+2 range. While standing 1+2 also benefits from being only -2 on block. So it's got the same viability as up forward 3 in that way, where you can use it to try to start an offense if you're feeling good about it. While standing 1+2 can also be cancelled by holding down, which makes it decent as a tool to transition from far away to point blank while recovering in full crouch. This isn't going to catch anyone doing anything, obviously, since there's no hitbox, but it's helpful in the context of your keepout, and you might be able to catch someone panicking after the cancel with a full crouch down forward 2. While standing 1+2 generally has the same application as forward forward 3, without the drawback of losing your turn on block, but you have to be reasonably confident that the other player isn't going to sidewalk it. There isn't really much else to say. While standing 1+2 is a really powerful attack that doubles as keep out and approach, and gives you that extra leverage on block to try to start an offense. You do want to practice instant while standing though if you're going to be using this attack in neutral. Like with while standing 4, while standing 1+2 is ideally performed as an instant while standing 1+2. If you practice it and perform it consistently in matches, instant while standing 1+2 is one of Asuka's most mortifying attacks. It's an advancing, safe on block, mid counter hit launching elbow. Just let that sink in. Back 1. If you're experienced with Asuka, you may think it's strange and fucked up that I'm going to talk about back 1 as a keep out move, but hear me out. I think I'm cooking. People don't tend to think Alkratz is cooking, but I think I'm cooking with this one. Punishing back 1 is complicated. The move can be cancelled by holding down, and the cancel can be whiff punished by reacting to back 1's startup, but the other player has to be fast about it, and they'll get counter hit out of their punish if you don't cancel. What will tend to happen instead is the other player will attempt parrying the hitbox and will respect the cancel. Back 1 doesn't have great evasiveness, but it is rather evasive when used from a long range, which I'll demonstrate a little bit in just a moment. The strategy is to perform back 1 and cancel it if you don't observe the other player committing to an attack. You can cancel this up to frame 26, so you can make that decision after you press the button. This will make you safe against reactionary low parry, since obviously you're not putting out a hitbox. If you see the other player committing to an attack, you let it rip, and it will likely hit or even counter hit if the other player is doing a string or something like that. And on counter hit, you see it does 42 damage, which is pretty good. Just be aware that the hitbox itself doesn't have much reach. When you're letting the hitbox come out, you're relying on the other player's forward movement to make the connection. Otherwise, you're going to be canceling this move most of the time you use it. Back 1 is an interesting move that involves forward movement without much risk, and with the opportunity to follow up afterwards with the cancel and all. Rather than other forward-moving keep-out options like up forward 3 or forward 4 that force you to play defense on Whiff. Back 1 is pretty low commitment as well, since with practice you're only letting the hitbox come out when you're sure it will hit. Beyond this, it's great on hit if the other player can't or won't bother to low parry it. It does 17 damage, which is pretty alright, and it's +6 on hit, which means that full crouch down forward 2 is a frame trap against anything except for down jab or a hop kick. Back 1 is a project of mine at the moment, and I'm still ironing out the kinks. It's normally thought of as being one of Asuka's most useless moves, but I do genuinely think it has some sauce when used from a range where its evasiveness is actually able to do its job. My theory is that it's useful when you're far away as a forward-moving attack that's low commitment, has some crushing and evasive properties, this does high crush, and allows you to do stuff afterwards if the other player is respecting the cancel. In this way, I'm wondering if this can be used as an interesting tool to close a chunk of distance from keep-out range and transition into a slightly closer range spacing game. In terms of the details of the evasiveness of back 1, there is a combination of backwards and slight downwards movement during the startup, and then pretty decent low profiling during the attack animation. The evasiveness isn't great, this is no backswing blow, but it is effective when used far enough away against some approach tools in certain matchups. Highs will obviously be high crushed, like Claudio and Alyssa's while running 2s or Asuka's own while running 1+2. High-hitting mids can also be evaded, usually due to the backwards movement of back 1. I think Jin and Reina's forward 2s and Hwoarang's forward 4 are some decent examples. With a particular range and timing, you can see that back 1 does actually sneak around these attacks. Reina's forward 2 is an interesting example because back 1 can evade the attack at a range where you're not able to outspace it with Asuka's backdash. Hwoarang's forward 4 kick was one of the first things I looked at a while back in terms of approach tools that have a hard time touching a distant back 1. Hopefully you can sort of see how the minor evasiveness of back 1 does achieve at least a little bit when used from a longer range, about 2.7 and beyond. Looking at these clips, I know this doesn't seem very impressive, and it really isn't, but it does feel a little bit better when I'm actually using back 1 in matches, especially since people tend to respect Asuka's keepout anyways, so I don't tend to get clipped out of it. And Asuka doesn't have any other moves that have this built-in backwards moving startup, so it's something. I don't tend to think much about buffs, but hopefully one day this move gets a little buff to its evasion or something. I think I could really use it. I think it would help. And that's it. I've taught you everything I currently know about Asuka's Keepout. If you've ever wanted to expand your Keepout game, or you were wondering how to implement some of Asuka's more nuanced Keepout moves, I hope this video gives you a good idea. I actually learned and improved my understanding a bit myself as I was putting this video together and gathering my thoughts. As usual, if you're interested in talking theory with me or other Asuka players, I recommend joining the Asuka Discord by hitting up that link in the description. Also, feel free to check out my Baby's First Asuka guide if you're interested in a brief look at some of Asuka's other major gameplay pillars, especially if you're just starting out as an Asuka player. I'm not sure if this video is really for you if you're just starting out, but if that's the case and you made it through the whole thing, then that must mean that you're interested in the character. There will be more like this to look forward to. I'll see you next time.